There is something strangely painful about looking back at moments when life still felt simple. A time when the future seemed endless, when the people around you felt like they would always be there, and when the biggest decisions were nothing more than choosing where to go next or how to spend another day together. You never realize that those ordinary moments are becoming memories while you are living them. That is exactly the feeling Final Fantasy XV tries to capture from the very beginning. Before the wars, before the ancient powers, before the weight of a kingdom falls onto his shoulders, Noctis is simply a young man traveling with his closest friends. For a brief moment, he has the freedom to enjoy a life that feels completely normal. But that freedom was never meant to last. Because hidden beneath this peaceful journey is a tragedy that Noctis cannot see coming. The person who was supposed to inherit a kingdom will discover that his destiny was never about gaining a throne. The future waiting for him was built around a sacrifice that would take away everything he still had left. His family, his dreams, the chance to live a life of his own choosing. And the cruelest part is that Noctis does not even have time to mourn what he loses. The moment his world falls apart, everyone immediately looks toward him for answers. The people around him do not see a grieving son who just lost his home. They see the last hope of Lucis, the chosen king, the person who must carry the burden that nobody else can. Final Fantasy XV is a story about a journey, but beneath the surface, it is a story about the painful transition between the person we want to be and the person the world demands us to become. It is about friendship, loss, and the price of accepting a responsibility that was decided before you were even born. Because sometimes, the greatest sacrifice is realizing that the life you imagined for yourself was never yours to keep.
Take care on the long road. Wheresoever you should go, the line of Lucis goes with you. Walk tall, my son.
The first scene of Final Fantasy XV already tells us something important about Noctis, long before the world begins to fall apart. We witness a moment that appears ordinary at first, a father saying goodbye to his son before a journey. Noctis is leaving home to meet Lunafreya, fulfilling the political arrangement that will unite their two nations. For him, this is simply the next step in his life. He is leaving with his friends, traveling across the continent and moving toward a future that still feels distant. There is a certain impatience in the way Noctis behaves during this moment. He is young, he wants to leave, and he does not fully understand the weight behind the conversation happening in front of him. But King Regis understands. The way Regis looks at his son tells us that this is not just a normal farewell. He already knows what Noctis does not. The future waiting for his son will demand a price far greater than he can imagine. Regis has spent his entire life protecting Lucis, carrying the responsibility of the crystal and the power passed down through generations of kings. He understands the role waiting for Noctis, and he understands the sacrifice connected to it. But instead of revealing the truth, he chooses silence. Because at that moment, Regis is not acting as a king. He is acting as a father. He knows that telling Noctis everything would only force him to carry a burden before he was ready. So he allows his son to leave, believing that there is still time, that everything can still be normal. This small moment becomes much more painful later, because the goodbye that Noctis believes is temporary becomes the last conversation he will ever have with his father. The news reaches him in the most ordinary way possible. He discovers the fall of Insomnia through a newspaper headline while preparing to continue his journey. The peace treaty between Lucis and Niflheim was a trap. The capital has fallen. King Regis is dead. The entire world Noctis knew has disappeared while he was away. And for a brief moment, he still refuses to believe it. That detail shows how impossible the truth feels to him. Noctis is a son trying to understand how the person who protected him his entire life could suddenly be gone. He and his friends immediately turn back toward Insomnia, hoping that somehow the situation is not as terrible as it seems. But when they reach the outskirts of the city, reality finally becomes unavoidable. From a distance, Noctis sees his home destroyed. The place where he grew up is now occupied by the enemy. The kingdom he was supposed to inherit no longer exists. And then the final confirmation arrives. Regis is dead. The same father who watched him leave only moments before, knowing what fate had prepared, is gone. This is the moment where Final Fantasy XV quietly changes the meaning of Noctis's journey. At the beginning, he believes he is traveling toward his future. After this moment, he is forced to continue carrying a past that has already been taken away from him. Noctis does not immediately accept this new reality. A part of him still tries to hold on to the life he had before. That is why the early journey across Lucis feels so different from the events surrounding it. One of the most interesting choices Final Fantasy XV makes is the way it handles the journey after Insomnia falls. From a traditional storytelling perspective, everything that happens should push Noctis toward urgency. His kingdom has been destroyed, his father is dead, and an empire is hunting him down. Every moment should feel like a race against time. Yet the game allows something unusual to happen. Noctis and his friends continue traveling. They camp, they cook, they take photos, they stop to fish. They explore the world around them. For some players, this slower pace created a strange contrast. The world was facing a crisis, but these four friends were still taking time to enjoy small moments together. However, this is one of the most important parts of Final Fantasy XV's storytelling. Because the game is showing us something that Noctis himself does not fully understand yet. He is trying to hold on to the last pieces of the life he lost. The car inherited from his father, the regalia, represents a connection to the past and a place where Noctis can still exist without the weight of the crown controlling every decision. Inside that car, he is not the future king of Lucis. He is simply Noct, a friend traveling with the people closest to him. The journey across Lucis becomes a temporary escape from reality. The threat is still there, the Empire is still moving, and the responsibility waiting for him has not disappeared. But for a little while, he can pretend that his life has not completely changed. This is why the game's focus on small interactions matters so much. The moments around the campfire, the conversations during long drives, the meals Ignis prepares, the photographs Prompto takes throughout their travels. These details are memories being created before everything falls apart. Final Fantasy XV spends so much time allowing the player to experience this peaceful routine because it wants us to understand what Noctis is losing. The journey is important because of who they are while they are traveling. At the beginning, the four friends feel completely natural together. Prompto brings energy and humor to the group, always trying to capture moments that everyone else might overlook. Gladio takes the role of the protector, someone who constantly pushes Noctis to become stronger and more prepared. Ignis maintains the balance between them, supporting Noctis while carrying the responsibility of guiding the future king. And Noctis himself is still allowed to be immature. He complains. He avoids responsibilities. He wants to sleep a little longer. He acts like someone who has never truly had to face the consequences of adulthood. But that is exactly what makes these moments so important. The game is showing 4 young men who are still figuring themselves out. They are united because they are friends, and that friendship is what makes the later parts of Final Fantasy XV so painful. Because when everything changes, it is not just a kingdom that Noctis loses. It is the version of himself that existed before responsibility took over. We spend time exploring, completing side quests, and discovering places across Lucis because, on some level, we understand the same thing he does. We know this moment cannot last forever. Every journey eventually reaches its destination. The turning point comes when they leave Lucis behind and travel toward Altissia. The open roads, the quiet campsites, and the feeling that they could continue traveling forever begin to disappear. The world becomes heavier. The responsibilities become impossible to ignore. And the final traces of Noctis's old life begin to fade away. The vacation is over. The journey of the king begins.
It is I, Lunafreya, blood of the oracle. Goddess of the seas, I beseech you, enter into this covenant that the king might reclaim the stone.
Altissia. The city was supposed to represent a new beginning. This was where Noctis would reunite with Lunafreya, fulfill the promise made between their 2 families, and finally move toward the future everyone expected from him. After losing his home and his father, this was the one thing that remained. The hope that something could still be saved. But the game builds this moment around a painful reality. The future Noctis was moving toward no longer exists. Instead of a wedding, he arrives in the middle of chaos. Instead of a reunion, he finds Lunafreya fighting to protect the world. For the entire game, Luna exists as a distant source of hope for Noctis. She represents the connection to his past, to his family, and to the life that was taken away from him. Even though they are separated from most of the story, the idea of reaching her keeps him moving forward. But when they finally meet again, there is no time for the peaceful moment they were promised. Lunafreya has already accepted her own role in this conflict. As the Oracle, she carries the responsibility of communicating with the Astrals and awakening the power necessary for Noctis to fulfill his destiny. She knows what must happen. She knows the cost. And she chooses to continue anyway. This is one of the most important differences between Noctis and Lunafreya throughout the story. Noctis spends much of the game trying to understand the responsibility placed on him. Luna has already accepted hers. She has spent her entire life preparing for this moment, knowing that her purpose may require everything from her. The tragedy is that Noctis finally reaches the person who represents hope for his future, only to lose her immediately. When Arden appears during the confrontation with Leviathan, he simply takes away the person who represented the last connection Noctis had to the life he wanted. And Noctis can do nothing. That moment changes the nature of his journey completely. Before Altissia, Noctis was still moving forward because he believed there was something waiting for him at the end. A reunion, a future, a reason to endure everything that had happened. After Luna's death, that future disappears. The person he was trying to reach is gone. The kingdom he was meant to protect is gone, and the peaceful life he was trying to preserve with his friends is gone. The farewell between Noctis and Luna that follows in a dreamlike space between life and death, Luna gives Noctis the Ring of the Lucii, the symbol of the power he must eventually inherit. But even this moment carries a sense of inevitability. The ring is a reminder of the destiny waiting for him. When Noctis wakes up, he is no longer the same person who left Insomnia at the beginning of the game. The young man who complained about responsibility and avoided thinking about the future has lost the last reason to run from it. Altissia is the moment where Final Fantasy XV's original journey truly ends. The road trip is over. The freedom is gone. From this point forward, Noctis is no longer traveling toward the future he imagined. He is walking toward the future that was chosen for him. And the changes are visible not only in Noctis, but also in the people around him. The four friends who once filled the journey with jokes, arguments, and simple moments of happiness are now carrying wounds that cannot be ignored. Ignis loses his sight protecting Noctis. Gladio struggles with the frustration of watching the future king break under the weight of everything he has lost. And Prompto, the person who spent the entire journey capturing their happiest moments, begins to realize that those moments are disappearing. The photographs change. At the beginning, they are records of friendship. They are proof of a life that felt normal. After Altissia, they become memories of a time that will never return. Because Final Fantasy XV understands something very human. We often only recognize the value of ordinary moments after they become impossible to experience again. And for Noctis and his friends, the memories they created during their journey are the last pieces of the life they lost. And this is where Final Fantasy XV begins to reveal its true theme. The game was about accepting that some parts of your life will end, no matter how desperately you try to preserve them. Noctis is forced to leave behind the person he was because the world needs him to become something else. The same journey that created those memories is also the journey that takes them away. Eventually, Noctis reaches the crystal, the source of Lucis's power, and the final step toward fulfilling his role as king. For his entire life, the crystal represented protection, hope, and the strength of his bloodline. But when Noctis enters it, he discovers the truth behind his destiny. The power he needs was never something he could simply inherit. It requires a sacrifice. The crystal does not offer him a way to return to the life he lost. It asks him to give up whatever remains. And when Noctis disappears inside the crystal, the world continues without him. 10 years pass. When he finally returns, the person who left is gone. The young prince who once complained about responsibility has become someone completely different. The world has fallen into darkness. The people he wanted to protect have waited for his return. And now, for the first time, Noctis understands the meaning behind his father's final goodbye. Regis was never preparing his son to inherit a peaceful kingdom. He was preparing him for the moment when he would have to give everything away. The crown was never a reward. It was a responsibility that demanded the ultimate sacrifice.
I love you all. Luna. Guys. Dad. The time we had together. cherish. Kings of Lucis. Come to me!
At the beginning of Final Fantasy XV, Noctis is someone who is running away from the future waiting for him. He avoids responsibility whenever he can. He does not want to think about what it means to become king. He only wants to enjoy the life he still has with the people closest to him. And honestly, that is what makes his journey so meaningful. Noctis was never a perfect hero. He was never someone who immediately understood his purpose or accepted his role without hesitation. He was a young man who had to lose almost everything before he could finally understand what truly mattered. By the end of the story, Noctis finally accepts the truth that his father knew from the beginning. His destiny was never about sitting on a throne. It was never about ruling over Lucis or being remembered as a legendary king. His role was to protect the people he loved, even if that meant he would never have the chance to live alongside them. The final moments of Final Fantasy XV are powerful because they do not focus on victory. They focus on what Noctis is leaving behind. Before facing Arden, Noctis shares one last night with his friends around the campfire. It is quiet. There is no grand speech about destiny, no celebration. Only 4 friends who know that their journey is coming to an end. And when Noctis finally allows himself to show his emotions, we see how much he has changed. The person who once struggled to accept responsibility has become someone willing to carry the heaviest burden possible. He stopped caring about his own life. He finally understood the value of the lives connected to his. That is why the final choice involving Prompto's photographs is such an important moment. After everything that happened, after all the battles and losses, Noctis is asked to choose a memory. One image that represents the life he had before everything changed. And that decision says everything about the journey. The most important part of Noctis's story was never becoming the chosen king. It was the time he spent as a friend, the moments around the campfire, the conversations during long roads, the memories created with the people who stood beside him. Final Fantasy XV is a game filled with imperfections, but its emotional core remains one of its strongest elements because it understands something deeply human. Life is not only defined by the moments when we achieve something. Often, what stays with us are the moments we shared with the people who made everything meaningful. The boy who left Insomnia wanted to know why he had to carry such a heavy fate. The king who returned already knew the answer. Because sometimes, the greatest act of love is accepting that the future you wanted cannot exist, and choosing to protect the people who will continue living after you are gone.
I'm home. I walk tall. And though it took me a while, I'm ready now.